I'm here with astrologer, author, and archetypal consultant, Hogarth Brown. Welcome, Hogarth.
Hello, thank you. And thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here, Laura. Thanks so much.
I'm so glad to have you. You are a man of many talents, and I would like to get to them all. But I want to start with your very popular astrology channel on YouTube, Hogarth's Global Astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And on that channel, you do astrology and some tarot readings on a variety of subjects, particularly events in the news. And you also do some fun collaborations with other readers. And I just want to say, I really enjoy your channel. And I'm wondering when you started it and what made you decide to start the channel.
Oh, good question. Good question. All right, I'll try and keep the story as brief as I can. So, in terms of my journey with astrology, and hopefully this is not preceding another question you may have, but my interest in astrology began when I was about 8 years old. And I realized it was all linked with, mythology, particularly the Greek and Roman mythology and the planets, etc. So that was really when the sort of the seed germinated. And then take that forward many years, and I've been interested in astrology for a long time. So I used to, I'm still technically on the payroll, but I used to work at a place called King's Place, which is a big cultural venue. And I used to do a lot of kind of like film work and adverts and stuff like that. And I used to manage at another place called the Battersea Arts Centre in Clapham in London. So I've got an artistic background. That's what I studied, etc. And I'd always, and increasingly as time had gone on, I'd done more and more astrological consultations. So I would be managing a conference at King's Place for, say, like maybe 500 people or something like that. And I would have the members of staff coming up to me, many of whom were artists and actors, and they'll be saying, when's my next audition? Who should I date? This, that, and the other. So I would be on the floor managing the clients and managing my front of house staff, telling them where to go and doing readings for them at the same time. So it was something that just kept building and building. And everyone said to me, I should have my own YouTube channel. And I'd looked at my chart in 2018 and I could see there were certain factors where that really was the case, without going into too much detail. But I looked at my chart and I was like, oh my God, this means YouTube. And then what happened was 2020, March 2020, we went into lockdown in the UK as the world went into that extraordinary time, which I actually warned everyone about at my work.
Wow.
Yes, I warned everyone at work. I said, listen, guys, 2019 may be intense now, but I said 2020 is going to be so unusual, so strange, almost apocalyptic. I said, I don't know what it is exactly, but I said the average 9 to 5 will be thrown out the window. That's what I said. So I said to everyone, get extra jobs. I don't know what's going to happen, but get ready. Yeah, because I could see the alignments coming. So there was a huge alignment just after Christmas Day of about 7 planets inside in one of the signs. And anyway, so we had furlough. We have the furlough scheme in the UK. Did you have that in the USA where people got paid essentially to sort of stay at home?
Yeah, we did. Probably not in the same way as you all, but there was some assistance. We're a little less assisting than you are in the UK, but there was some monies given. There's some checks occasionally and some loan postponements and different things. So yeah, we had some help.
Brilliant. Okay, well, there was a little bit of that. So in the UK, and I think in other places in Europe, we had something which was called the Furlough Scheme, which essentially was a government-backed, essentially it paid people's wages. It effectively paid people's wages. Now, it was equivalent to about between 100% and maybe 3/4, something like that. And I'd worked at quite a few jobs, so I was getting paid from 2 jobs, yeah? Lucky me, but mind you, I'd put in the back-breaking work. So I just thought, okay, we have this extraordinary time. And I thought to myself, whenever will there be a time in history where I will be paid to stay at home? And that's when I launched my YouTube channel. I thought it was now or never. I felt the push from the planets. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. So I launched in March 2020, and I've never looked back. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. It's been extraordinary.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. It's quite a phenomenon what's happening on YouTube. There's so much going on YouTube. I want to ask you about the kind of astrology you do. You're a Neo-Vedic astrologer. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Great question. Yes. So just to give a little bit of background. So Vedic astrology is a strand of Indian astrology, which is like a kind of a trifecta, a holy trinity of kind of ideas and principles. So you have yoga, which almost everyone knows it in the West now, and it's byword for fitness, health, etc. So that is actually one tranche of the philosophy. The other one is Ayurveda, which I'm sure you know, and almost every single one of your guests would know. And of course, that is the approach to food and diet and doshas in the body, etc. But the third one, which might not be as familiar, and it is referred to as Jyotish in Vedic astrology, which means the science of light or the study of light. So one of my analogies, and now this is a tradition that's over 5,000 years old. And I'm still very much interested in, physics, science, NASA science. We've got that. What is it? The James Webb Telescope? Those new images, which are just astonishing. I mean, I love the Hubble stuff, but my goodness, these new pictures are amazing. And I'd love to work with people in NASA and looking at all these different things. So you have this ancient tradition, which I would refer to as almost like what I refer to as allegorical astronomy, because now I know this might be a touch point for some people, because people are like, well, astrology is not a science, but Vedic astrology, I would say, is the closest, because when I've got an accurate birth time and I look at the planets, because I'm always saying planets are people in Vedic astrology, then it's so accurate. So what I do is I take the traditional 5,000-year-old Vedic astrology and I add in the outer planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And I also include the asteroid Chiron, and I also include Ceres, who is sort of like a planetoid asteroid. And her orbit goes between Mars and Jupiter. And what I've found is now traditional Vedic astrology, they did know about the outer planets, but they didn't include them as part of the canon. Right. But they understood that there were those effects. But I do include the outer planets because they are so profound, and they reveal often these unusual, unplanned for, or extra depth and resonance to people's lives that wouldn't necessarily be covered by traditional Vedic astrology. So when you combine all those factors together, it's just been awesome. So that, I hope, explains how that energy works.
Very helpful. And so just to clarify, the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, is what your reading of them is what makes you a Neo-Vedic astrologer, as opposed to just a traditional Vedic astrologer that does not read those outer planets.
Indeed. There are some people now. There's lots of variations. There are some people, they do Vedic astrology in terms of the nakshatras, which are these star clusters, these asterisms, as it were. And the moon spends one day in each asterism, and we can go into that detail later. And they still use tropical signs. Now, this is controversial, because the stars are actually in different places. So I just do the neat, clean Vedic astrology, but I include those outer planets because the outer planets, although they move very slowly, they're extremely powerful.
Mhm.
Anytime that they are conjunct, maybe the internal planets, because in Vedic astrology, they count the sun all the way out to Saturn. It stops there.
Mhm.
But if you've got a Saturn-Neptune conjunction or a Sun-Neptune conjunction, or just Neptune is in the first house of a person's chart, for example. So many of my clients, if they're female and they've got Neptune in the first house, I refer to them as daughters of Neptune.
And what is that? What does that mean?
What it means is whenever a person has an outer planet in the first house, particularly if it's on its own, it will be invisible in terms of the traditional Vedic astrology, but it will make a huge impact on that person's life. So one thing that I've seen, for example, whenever a person's got Neptune in the first house, everything that Neptune symbolizes will be present in a way in their physical body, because the rising sign, the first house, represents the body, the presentation. Neptune is a dreamy and gaseous planet. I call it the planet of talent because he deals with supernatural gifts, he deals with spirituality, but he dissolves the boundary between the three-dimensional world and the realms beyond. So all my Neptune people who have Neptune in the first house, they're all spiritual without a doubt. It's just super clear. But they also have to deal with some of the challenges of Neptune, which is illusions, the unreal appearing real, gaslighting and projection. So very often, people with Neptune in the first house, they are very often misunderstood, misrepresented, or they find that people will project their fantasies and illusions and delusions onto them, whether they want to or not. So that just gives you a little example of.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. And, you know, you did a wonderful reading for me. And I remember, and I don't remember where the placement of Neptune is at this moment, but it was a very clear for you. We were like, oh, there's your music. There's your, my work as a musician prior. So yes, I highly recommend a reading with you.
Thank you.
Can you talk just a little bit about the difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology? Because they are very different. They're compatible maybe in some ways, maybe you can speak to that, but they're definitely a different animal.
Absolutely. And that's a very good question, because of course, many of your viewers, of course, if they've grown up in the West, they will be familiar to at least some degree or not with what we would call Western tropical astrology. Now, this is something I always tell to all of my clients. And of course, we went through this as well, didn't we, when we did our consultation? But the long and short of it is this. Western tropical astrology is pitched to a part of the sky that was relevant around about the fall of Rome. Rome fell approximately in around about 540 AD. It took a long time, but let's just say that was it, when the Visigoths and all the other came along and just basically sacked the place, for how many times? Rome was sacked many times. But the point is, at that point in time, tropical astrology and Vedic astrology were pretty much in the same place. Western tropical astrology is also an amalgam of Greek Hellenistic astrology and a bit of Babylonian astrology as well. Babylonian astrology, like Vedic astrology, is sidereal. What does it mean? It means it essentially follows the stars, because the stars are actually moving. They're referred to as fixed stars, but it's not really true, because as we understand, everything is in a state of flux. We live in the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is moving. So basically, the stars in the sky are moving backwards by 1 degree, approximately 71 to 72 years. Now, they don't wait until the 71st year to move like that. They're slowly moving. So over eons of time, this really begins to add up. So in Vedic astrology, we use the equal house system. So each sign has its there's 12 houses of influence. Each is 30 degrees wide. 12 times 30 equals 360. That gives you the whole sky. So out of out of a 30-degree portion of sky, the stars by precession have been moving backwards. Or maybe I'll do it this way because this will be in reverse in the video. So they've moved backwards by almost 24 degrees out of 30. So that means anyone that is their star sign is Aries, for example, in Western tropical, they're probably a Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
The overlap is only 6 degrees. So if they are late Aries, say like they say, oh, I'm Aries, but I'm on the cusp with Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
When you take off 23/24 degrees, they're actually well within. They're at, so say like, for example, sorry, that like if they are late Aries and you take it back, they will still be in Aries, but most people actually drop back into the sign before. So the vast majority of people that are Aries sun sign are actually Pisces sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reveal that in their consultation, they're like, oh my God, I've always felt like I'm more of a Pisces, etc.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions about that. One, my sun sign stays the same, but my rising sign dips back. And I think that that's true of a lot of the planets. You might, have one planet, in one placement, it moves. So what do you say to people who, are having a little identity crisis around, is there a way to blend the two? Or, if someone's a Gemini and now they're a Taurus and Vedic and,
well,
how do you counsel them?
Well, what normally happens is that, and particularly as well, and it's so funny because I should take a photograph each time it happens, because you can imagine the shock for people who for years and years have identified as Virgos, and then it goes back and they realize that they're Leos. And you know what? They all do the same thing. They all go, oh my God. And they do a big flick of their mane-like hair.
Yeah.
I'm like, you do realize that is the typical Leo response, yeah? Because they all come to me they all come to me and they think they're Virgos, and I see them. The hair is out there like this, all glossy and shiny, and they think they're these sweet little Virgos. And when I reveal to them that they're Leos, it's hilarious. But you know what happens? It's almost like throwing a little hand grenade in there. But what happens is this: it's so accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so pertinent to that person's life, they forget about their tropical placements. Once we're 5-10 minutes in, that's it. And what often happens is that particularly by the end of the consultation, their tropical placement is no longer relevant for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They completely, because it's so accurate, and I can look at their life. As you know, planets are people. And I can look at their brothers, their sisters, their mother, their father, their bosses, their aunts, their uncles, situations in their life, key events, what's happened in the past, what's happening in the present, what's happening in the future. And then after that, it's almost, not to be bad to tropical astrologers, there'll be many probably that are listening, and it does still work. The distance between the planets are the same, but it doesn't really compare. But I would let you more speak for that rather than me saying that.
Yes, well, I think it's interesting, and that was another question I had. Do you feel like Vedic astrology is somehow more predictive than Western astrology?
Excellent question. Well, the long and short answer is yes.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yes. Why? One of my analogies for tropical astrology is that it's like classical music. We all know the tunes. Yeah, we all know. We've all heard of the main things. Yeah. Vedic astrology is much more like the study of jazz.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot more components, but there is so many different ways of approaching a different problem. But then once you go through all of that complexity, there is what I call the stage of like minimalism, where there's just these profoundly simple yet clear as day arrivals at truth, shall we say. So in terms of the accuracy, because of precession of the equinoxes, which I was talking about, the stars going backwards, what happens is this in Western astrology: the slower the planet moves, so the further you go out, the more inaccurate it becomes. Why? Because it takes that planet, a slow-moving planet, longer to catch up to that true place where it's giving its results. So say, for example, the moon is the quickest, and she goes through all the signs in a month. So if a Western astrologer is looking at your moon placement in tropical, for example, it's 24 degrees ahead, but she will catch up to that placement in about a month or so. Mercury and Venus, they're very fast, but it takes them a little bit longer, so they'll catch up. But once you start getting to Mars, which maybe spends 2 months in a sign, maybe that's not too long, but it takes him 2 years to go around the sun. Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the sun. Saturn takes 29 years to go around the sun. So for Saturn to move 24 degrees, to come to that tropical placement, it will take Saturn about 2 years, give or take. Even a bit longer. He spends 2.5 years in a sign. Pluto, for example, can spend up to 30 years in a sign. Do you see?
Yeah.
So it takes him a very long time to move 30 degrees. So when it comes to the outer planets, who could be given a very profound and deep effect in a person's chart, that where the Western astrologer is predicting that movement of the planet to be will be much later. So do you see?
That makes a lot of sense. And you do a lot of predictions on your channel. You read on well-known people and on events happening globally, and you totally nailed it. Well, you've nailed it with a lot of things, but you totally nailed it with Boris Johnson. I watched that video, and it was like the next day he resigned. So you were seeing something in his chart that was like, oh, he's gone. And what other predictions have you made? That you mentioned that the pandemic, you saw something coming, and what other predictions stand out for you?
I think the one that stands out most vividly and clearly, and which you can literally go back and see these videos, they're in a certain playlist, but maybe one of the predictions that I'm most proud of, because so many people didn't see it coming, was January 6th.
Really?
The insurrection. Yeah.
What did you see?
Now, what I saw, so it was a combination of things. Now, as you've said, I look at a lot of well-known figures. And one of them is Donald Trump, and many people in politics, not also Democrats as well. Sure. And I have a little nickname for him, which is Duck L'Orange, because sometimes, because of algorithms and stuff like that, sometimes you need to use little names. And so when you look at a person, when you look at people's charts, you see the intrinsic nature of that person. Also the intrinsic nature of their family and the karmas they were born into, because we have to deal with our own karmas, but also the karmas of our family. Planets are people, and the moon, for example, represents the mind and the emotions, our history, our talents, how we instinctively respond to things, our past and our childhood, but also represents the mother. So when you look at the moon in a person's chart, it's saying a lot. Now, in Donald Trump's chart, the moon, he's got one of the most difficult moons. Surprise, surprise. The moon represents the mind and the emotions. So his moon is debilitated in the sign of Scorpio.
Oh, wow.
It is a Kimadruma moon, which means it's also an isolated moon, but it's also conjunct the south node of the moon, which intensifies a lot of that. It is also a Gandanta moon, which means it's in the drowning point. There's this point between a fire sign and a water sign, and a water sign going into a fire sign, which is called Gandanta. And it's like a drowning point. It's a karmic knot or a loosening. His moon is right there. but it's also conjunct of the 13th sign of the zodiac. I don't know if you've heard of this one, which is called Ephucus.
No, I don't know that.
There is a 13th sign. It fell out of fashion. Now, the Egyptians knew about it. The ancient Greeks knew about it. I think the Babylonians know about it. And it sits between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And it's called Ephucus. And it means the serpent priest. Yeah, priest or priestess. However, the shadow of this Ephucus can be the occultist, a person that can control cults. I'm not making this up. Trump's moon is right there, so I'm just saying that.
Wow.
In November, his moon is slap bang on this placement. Yeah, and everyone's scratching their heads and they're wondering why certain things. Now, look, however people choose to vote is their free will and their choice. So I'm not anti anyone that's into Trump. I'm not saying that at all. People have their free will. They vote how they see fit. But I'm talking about the energies and how I predicted this.
Yes.
So so if we remember, the election was in 2020, wasn't it? The election. So I looked at Donald Trump's chart and I looked at November 2019. Yeah. And there was a huge eclipse, lunar eclipse, that happened in Scorpio, sidereal Scorpio, and it was exactly on top of Donald Trump's moon.
Oh, wow.
And I said to everyone, you can see this video, I'm sure. Let me think. Oh, no, it must have been, no, what am I talking about? I think it was in November 2020. It was that time around the election. Forgive me, guys, because I do so many videos, but look in my playlist. It's like my political playlist. Anyway, and I said, Donald Trump is going to do something extraordinary, something weird, something bombastic, something violent, because he's going to run out of options. And it's like he's lost his mind. Yeah, because when you have an eclipse with Ketu or any other nodes of the moon, it can destabilize the moon, the mind, very much. And this was exact. I said he's going to try something violent. I said it's like a coup. I think he's going to attempt a coup.
Wow.
And so you can go back. So part of it, there is a video that I did, which was my a video on Ivanka Trump, which was a Christmas special. And I looked at her chart, but because of course we're all related, you can look at planets and stuff like that. And I looked at her Navamsha chart, her second half of life chart, and I read her father, Donald Trump, from there. And it was also backing it up. I said, when she turns 40, which she did recently, I said she's going to have some kind of legal interaction with her father, where she's going to have to appear in court to kind of have something to do with some kind of violent action or something weird that he's done. Yeah.
When did you get this? When was this reading?
Oh, when was that? I have to remember. So okay. So let's think. It
Roughly.
I think it was my Christmas special 2020. I think that was it.
Okay.
And then of course 2021, January 2021 was when it all happened.
Wow.
So you can look at that playlist. I mean, one person accused me of being in love with Ivanka Trump, and which is completely untrue. But when you're on YouTube, people can say anything. But if they want verification on that, and I'm sure you know that, they can look back at that playlist. So that's one of the ones where it was uncanny. No one else was talking about it. I even said Pluto is going to go into sidereal Capricorn, which deals with government, distribution systems of all kinds. And I said he is bringing the energy of the flying gripe. Yeah, and you're probably thinking, what's a flying gripe? Everyone's scratching their heads. Lean forward, everyone. Now, a flying gripe is essentially, it's like a type of bird of prey, an eagle. Yeah. And now at that time, Pluto was just at the edge of sidereal Sagittarius, about to go into Capricorn. And it was conjunct the flying gripe. Pluto deals with the underworld, the underbelly, everything pretty much the worst that humanity can do, unfortunately. Pillaging, slavery, exploitation, people trafficking, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Corruption, violence,
Mm-hmm.
mind control. And I could see that he was about to enter sidereal Capricorn. And he was in the tail of the flying gripe. And I said, guys, something poopy is going to happen. Yeah. Because Pluto is in the tail of the eagle. And you don't want to be near the tail of any bird. I don't know if you've seen a heron flying over when it kind of lets fly, shall we say. I saw it once when I was a kid, and I was astonished by that. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then what happened on the 1st of January, 2021,
mm-hmm.
Pluto went into sidereal Capricorn because, of course, in Western astrology, they already had Pluto at 24 degrees. Yeah, there or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
But sidereally was the true NASA placement, shall we say, of Pluto. And he went in on the 1st of January, 2021. I said, something crazy is going to happen. I said, something to do with the capital, because it was talking about government. I thought it would take 2 weeks. 5 days later, we had January the 6th. And what was one of the things that they did, without going into explicit detail? They did something on the walls. Do you remember?
Right. Yes, they were scatting. It was a very scatological experience. Yes. Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm going to go back and re-listen to that, because that's so accurate and so interesting too. It's always so interesting how you can see, as you were saying in Ivanka's chart, you could read the father. You can get multiple views of the same thing and see it repeat. See it clearly, stating that. We are in the middle of a terrible time with what's going on in Europe and Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And everybody's, trying to figure out what's going on with Putin and, when this will end. And I just want to get your astrological take on this. Do you have any thoughts or any predictions there?
Yes. And as you can imagine, I've done quite a few videos on Vladimir, and my nickname for him on the channel is Putinshka. Yeah, so when I write it out, there you are. He does have, what I would say is this: he does have an extraordinary chart. An extraordinary chart doesn't necessarily mean it's a good one. It just means it's extraordinary. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He, particularly in his Navamsha, he has a lot of planets in very, very high dignity. In fact, in his Navamsha chart, in his second house, in his second half of life chart, he doesn't have a single planet in any kind of debilitation or anything like that. They're all either in their own signs of exaltation, or in the signs of friends. Yeah, this is exceedingly rare. He also has something. This is luckily something I've got as well, but he's doing the shadow expression. He's got something which is a Maha Prasha yoga. Mm-hmm. And what that means is it's known as the yoga of great men. Yeah. Now, I know that might sound a little bit sexist, but we need to understand that way thousands of years ago, they were not talking about female emancipation and women's rights. Yeah. If your husband died, you're supposed to throw yourself on the funeral pyre. Yeah. Oh. Do you know what I mean? Which is,
right.
which is just ridiculous. Yeah, your husband dies and you have to throw yourself as well. But these were ancient times, different ideas. And what is his Venus, planet Venus, is in Libra. It's in its own sign, and it's in his first house, and it's all about presentation. Venus is the sign of, weirdly enough, congeniality. Yeah, relationships, beauty, aesthetics, presentation. It can even mean the good life, yachts, boats, etc., opulence. But there's actually a psychic side to Venus. But the point is this, is that very much what his chart and life is about is presenting an illusion. Mm-hmm. An illusion.
Yeah.
and I get psychic hits on him all the time. He has an extraordinarily dark side to him, which is almost beyond the beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even had psychic impressions where, the planets have just been like, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that I've looked at his chart, and in earlier videos, before he actually admitted it, I was almost kind of pulling his leg a little bit, obviously from a safe distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, he has delusions of grandeur, and he would imagine himself to be someone like Peter the Great or Catherine the Great.
Right.
And it just so happens, months after me saying that, he said he is like Peter the Great, allegedly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have a person who's got this extraordinary ego, this sense of entitlement,
Mm-hmm.
but there is this extraordinary emptiness, which is beyond something. It's not even the void, like what I was shown. It's much more like a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
It's this kind of destructive energy, because a black hole is like, the gravitational force is so strong, not even light can escape. Yeah, because
Right.
light is both a particle and a wave. Yeah, if we go to our traditional physics, it's more like that. Whereas the void is different. The void is very good for psychic intuition, all of that kind of stuff. But a black hole is crushing. Mm-hmm. It's destructive, but it sometimes has these projectiles as well. So this is a man that is almost motivated now by annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer about power as much. Because if a person is into power, even if it's in the shadow of Pluto, they still want something. They either want the wealth or the greed or the power, some tangible asset.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point where a person can be moved, be even beyond Pluto, which is what he sort of indicated, which is that absolutely destructive element. So you would have seen me pulling cards along with my collaborators. Yeah. And one of the things I said, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I said, Putin is going to try and use food as a weapon.
Oh my.
I said he's going to, and you guys can look back and see the video, because the card I pulled for him was the Six of Pentacles, which is the rich man, giving money, and you've got the hands begging. Yeah. I said he is going to try and weaponize food, because he would have been inspired by Stalin. And again, everyone, for entertainment purposes only, just so keep ourselves safe. And what did Stalin do? He starved out the Ukrainians. Millions of people died. And I think Putinshka has been like, because remember, he has a powerful yoga. Libra is about culture, literature, history. He does know his history. He deliberately misrepresents it, but he knows it. So he'd have been leafing through the books and been like, oh, maybe I can use this trick again. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought I may have made a mistake, because I interpreted that the cards that he would be trying to do something in regards to food and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he signed that deal with Ukraine. Yeah. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe it was the opposite. And maybe he was being charitable. But when I was tuning into the energy, it was like, no, he wants to destroy. And what happened? The next day, Odessa was bombed, and they bombed the grain stores, or tried to.
Right. Exactly. So fascinating. Mm-hmm. Well, we are in, there's a lot happening. Well, there's always a lot happening astrologically, but I don't know. Am I wrong to think that it's just been like even more so? I mean, in recent years, just like off the hook, but like even right now, there's a lot happening and it's heating up. And what is happening? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so there's several things happening at once. I'm loving these questions, by the way. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Giving me the chance to dig into my astrological knowledge. And so we've got several factors at once. The main factor for this, shall we say, the set backdrop, as it were. Mm-hmm. So in a way, Earth School in many ways is kind of like a series of plays happening. You remember Shakespeare said, life is but a play, and we're all actors, and life is but a stage, or forgive me for not getting it quite right, but you know that thing. And there's a lot of truth to that. So I want you to imagine the backdrop, the theater that we're all in is this Pluto return of the United States. Yeah, because it's basically the US that's having this right now. Now, you remember I was talking about those orbits, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, Saturn takes 29 years to orbit, etc. And you go out further and further and further. Pluto takes about between 244 to around about 248 years to return back to his original place.
Wow. But
his orbit is elliptical and slightly wobbly, yeah? Because he can stay in a sign for 12 years or 30 years or thereabouts. What's happening now? America is having its first Pluto return because guess what? America is coming up to, when you use the chart of the Declaration of Independence, that's the one. The one I use is 4th of July, 1776, 6:30. Yeah, many astrologers use that one. Sidereally, oh my gosh, it gives the United States a Sagittarius ascendant. Which means Capricorn is the second house. I will read for you what is the second house all about. So the second house deals with the face, the neck, the teeth. It deals with the voice, early childhood, food and diet, education. It deals with music. It can even deal with marriage. It deals with speech. What's something that America is very precious about? Free speech. Right. Yeah? It deals with vision, the right eye in particular. It can even deal with singing. It deals with values, family values, self-value, and money. Deals with money. For the USA chart, the second house is ruled by Saturn because it's in the sign of Capricorn. Yeah. So if we go here, let me just see if I can find the USA chart for you because I've always got it knocking around. Aha! Voila. So I don't know if you can see that. There we are. Let's go like that. Sorry, folks, if you can't see it. I wasn't planning to whip out a chart, but here we are. Now, if we look here, here it is, the USA Declaration. I said constitutional chart, but really it's the Declaration of Independence. That's when America was born. The planets are declamatory. When we make political declarations, sign treaties, etc., there is a birth. Yeah. And if we look here, here is Pluto in the second house of the USA chart. Now, remember what I said. And here it's retrograde, which means there's even more karma on it. It's even more subterranean. Now, you remember I said Pluto can represent what? The worst that humanity can do.
Right.
Yeah. Sex trafficking, scandals, corruption. Yeah. Everything else that you can imagine under the sun without me getting too explicit. Here, it's with Ketu, the south node of the moon that I called snip, snip. Yeah. North node of the moon, Rahu, a head without a body, I call gobble, gobble. We want more of. Snip, snip deals with cutting things away and scrutiny. But there is even a violent side as well to Ketu. In the USA chart, Pluto and Ketu in the same house. And what's happened here is it's taken Pluto about 200, almost 250 years to come back to the same place. When Pluto entered on the 1st of January, 2021, that was your insurrection. Yeah.
Wow.
That was it. That's what I was predicting. That's what I said. Get ready, everyone, because now it's official. Now, not to be bad to, Western tropical astrology, of course, many Western tropical astrologers are excellent. But according to them, Pluto was already at 24 degrees of sidereal Capricorn. Actually, astronomically, no, it's here.
Wow.
By transit, it is right here. So it has begun. What is Capricorn? Capricorn it's the sign of pressure, first of all, sign of pressure. It's ruled by Saturn. Capricorn represents governments of all kinds, represents distribution systems of all kinds, Infrastructure represents rules and regulations, represents big companies, big, it can be like things like big pharma, big technology, whatever, big, far-reaching things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Pluto, of course, is coming back and dredging up all of this stuff, because part of the motto of Pluto is transform or die. Yeah, because he's symbolized by the phoenix rising from the ashes. So what's happening now, particularly, is happening all around the world, because Pluto, this very dark element, is in Capricorn. So have you noticed revolutionary things coming up all around the world? Sri Lanka, we've just seen the UK politics, which basically UK politics for me is like a combination of Game of Thrones and Monty Python. Yeah. Basically, that's UK politics. Yeah. And, you know, it's not perfect, but I always say in UK politics, you don't only get stabbed in the back, you get stabbed in the front as well. I'm sure you've seen Prime Minister questions, and we don't hold back. Yeah, we just let rip. So the Tories are what? Saturn represents traditional things. Capricorn deals with top-down structures, tradition. Pluto is unsettling and transforming and breaking down these old structures in order to birth something new. Pluto gets rid of things that are dysfunctional, things that are no longer working. They say when you're having a Pluto transit, it's a bit like having open heart surgery without anesthetic. Yeah. Wow. So we've got this happen, and this is why it's so intense. But on top of that, for America, it is the Pluto return as well. So it's even more. So America's having to face every aspect of its shadow, because Pluto is shadow. Hades, god of the underworld. It's like, in a way, America is taking its journey to the river Styx and is now having to what? Pay Chiron, who is also called Chiron, who was the boat, the man that takes you to sea. So Cerberus, which is sort of like the dog of the underworld, and then you've got Hades, and then you have Persephone, who are king and queen of that realm. So what's happening is, energetically, psychically, spiritually, emotionally, physically, America is going through this extraordinary birthing process of breakdown and transformation all at the same time. And this is why it feels so intense. We've got the midterms coming up in November, and guess what? There's going to be a full lunar eclipse on the 8th of November.
Oh my gosh.
On the exact same day of the midterms.
Oh man.
Yeah, get your popcorn ready. Yeah.
Wait, any predictions for what that's going to bring?
Oh.
No, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Do you want to know?
Yeah,
I mean,
I do.
Okay. Eclipses are incredibly important. Now, they're not an unusual phenomena. They happen a lot. Yeah. Last year, like for example, 2020, we had 6 eclipses. 6. Yeah. What a tumultuous time. 2020, 2021, you know, very, very difficult years. I think this year we've got 4. So first of all, what are the eclipses? The eclipses are actually in reference to Rahu and Ketu, what is known in Western astrology as the North Node and the South Node. And they are coordinates in the sky. And essentially, when the sun or the moon come close to the shadow points in the ecliptic, that's what causes the eclipses. There's a big story about it in Vedic astrology, too long to explain. But how do they work? Now, the nodes of the moon, they are known as smoky. In Indian astrology, we call them half planets. They have the dignity of half planet, but they're not physically embodied, but they're extraordinarily powerful. They set fate and destiny for everyone and everything on planet Earth. Anything that even has any kind of consciousness, even companies. Yeah. You can actually cast a chart for a company. Now, Rahu and Ketu are highly unpredictable. One deals with obsession and poisons and wanting more of something, and the other one deals with moksha, liberation from this world, but explosions and violence. So what happens is the moon represents, on a mundane level, the collective, represents ordinary people. So does Saturn, but it shows the collective consciousness of the people. What does the moon do? It waxes and it wanes. This is why people have their moment in the sun, and then what happens? The public gets bored and they move on. Yeah, it's very rare that, do you know what I mean? Everyone has their 5 minutes of fame, and then what? We get bored. Yeah, even of the Kardashians at some point. Yeah, who've had a very long time in the sun. You know, and that's not to pull, not to pull their leg. There's actually a lot of savvy going on there, but just to give you an idea. So when eclipses happen, so you know, like when you have static in a way that either builds up on a TV. Do you remember once upon a time when we used to use the coat hanger as an aerial? Or say like your computer's playing up. What do? We switch it off and switch it on again. It's the classic, isn't it?
Right.
That's the first thing, isn't it? Someone calls up a technical kind of center. Oh, my computer's not working. And then one of the first things they said, have you tried to switch it off and on again? Yeah. So an eclipse is like a reset. They can be extraordinary because they can give great downloads to people. Like I've had some amazing things happen near eclipses, incredible kind of prophetic dreams or some huge insight, stuff like that. So what it means is when the moon is eclipsed, it means something profound is potentially going to happen in the collective. There could be some kind of revelation or insight where people get a powerful download, but it can also mean something very unpredictable could happen.
I see. To
the masses. And it is happening on the day of the election of the mid. Can you believe it?
Wow.
I mean, talk about astrological timing. Yeah. So the nodes are unpredictable. I can't say exactly what is going to happen. But it could be something shadowy. What often happens is something comes out of the dark that we didn't know. Now, I could say more, but I don't want to spook people. But let's just say people should try and be careful on that day, because anything could happen on that day. It's going to be historic one way or another, because these midterms, this is it. Like, this is the big kahuna.
Wow.
These midterms, and I don't want it to sound too dramatic, but I think everyone realizes this anyway. These midterms will decide the fate of America going forward.
Wow.
They will. Because there are timelines. And I've seen different ones, but this is one of the main ones. This is where the fork in the road happens. Will America go to the positive side of Pluto? There is a positive side, which is transformation, rebirth, accountability, mea culpa. The good side of Pluto is the acknowledgement of the shadow and the integration of the shadow. It is the part where the phoenix does rise from the ashes and is renewed, resplendent, gilded. Yeah. That is also the promise of this Pluto return, particularly as it's happening in the second house of what? Values, money, finance, you know. I did recently, there was a video that I did where I teamed up with a collaboration which I did with someone called Linda G, she's a very popular psychic on YouTube. Now, what I did was on that video, I did a comparison between the USA chart, which you saw in the background, the birth chart of the GOP, and the birth chart of the Democrats. And I read all three energetically, from there. Now, I can't go into all the detail. It would take too long. It's better just to watch that video. But there is very interesting things in the GOP chart which line up exactly with Trump's chart. Yeah, same factors. So what's happening is, because there is this fight for power and control, and this Pluto, which is this kind of mind control in many ways of the masses and stuff like that. And look, the GOP are not the only ones who are doing these kind of things. I can't go into all the detail, but it is a trope. Yeah, we are in extraordinary times where there's all sorts of mind games and gaslighting going on from almost every corner. Yeah,
right.
Especially social media and stuff like that, because it can all be adjusted, shall we say. So what's happening is this underbelly. Oh, you know the image that I'm getting? Do you remember Alien?
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like the GOP have had, it's almost like Trump is like the face hugger, yeah, that's laid an egg inside the GOP, and this horror has burst forth, yeah. And it's like, yeah, running around. I mean, who can forget that?
That's
and
right.
What we basically need is a Sigourney Weaver to come in and save the day. That's basically my analogy.
We all need Sigourney Weaver. It's so true.
You know, I can't put it any other way. Otherwise, I'll end up going on too long. And I know but you know, that for me is the analogy.
Oh, this is fantastic. Hogarth, I just love talking with you. Couple of things. One, I want to say, on your channel, there's a lot of, you produce a lot of content, and there is a lot of really excellent free material. People can come and they can subscribe, and they need to like and subscribe, and it's nice to make a donation. And also to keep you going, because this is how you make your living. But also you have memberships, and your memberships are very interesting. And I think one level of membership is you go into even more detail on current events and things that you don't get into in your regular channel. And then the next level, which I'm going to do, I've been waiting till I had some time to focus there, is you teach Vedic astrology. And I just want to say, I think you do an excellent job teaching. I really think that, and there's some of the videos that you do, you have an introductory video people can watch, and it's just, you do such an excellent job. You really bring it home. Like, I love how you call K2 snip snip and Rahu gobble gobble, because you can really understand what's going on there. So people who are really interested in that, they can, for a really reasonable fee, have access to your videos and teachings on Vedic astrology and a whole lot more. So I really encourage people to join you there. And we got a glimpse of it here today. You also have a book. You have a series of books, which we didn't even get to talk about. So I'm hoping you'll come back on, and we'll do.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah,
I'd love to have you on, and we'll do do a temperature of what's going on. Definitely with the midterms, we'll have to check back in. But the Hermie Porta series. You have that. So you're an author of historical adventure fiction.
Correct. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do historical adventure fiction and stuff like that. And those books were published. I mean, there's a slight question mark at the moment with Amazon, shall we say, which I need to kind of resolve and sort out. But they were books. I'm very passionate about Italy, history, science and stuff. And essentially there is a time traveling professor that has this ambition to collect together for a salon the greatest minds in history. And the way he does that is by essentially kind of collecting their souls. That is sort of like the big, the main thing. And he's pursued by his daughter through time, etc. So I would say, maybe on the next one I could talk more about that. And I also did a book as well over lockdown, which I need to edit and do lots of different things on, and see to maybe get that one published as well. And it was about the UK. So looking at the UK via its birth chart. And what makes a nation a nation. And of course, the next book after that would have to be the USA. But things are moving so quickly. But thank you so much for sharing that information with the audience. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And people can schedule a session with you. You also do archetypal blueprint. We're going to have you back on to talk about that. That's a whole other thing, I said at the beginning, you're a man of many talents, a Renaissance man. So we've got a lot more to cover. But your website is the archetypalblueprint.com.
That's correct. Yeah, the archetypal blueprint.com. So if anyone's interested in consultations, they can see everything there. And of course, as Laura said, she's had a consultation with me. So if anyone's curious, they can just ask you about what my style is. It is very different from other astrologers because, of course, how just my approach and my technique, but it's something I've been amazed at the feedback and just what can be discovered in a person's chart. And I get some of the most extraordinary questions that you would not believe what my clients ask, but I'm able to answer.
Fantastic. And the YouTube channel is Hogarth's Global Astrology. So everyone check that out too. Hogarth, thank you so much. It was so fun. It's always fun talking to you. 2 Gemini moons, you know.
Yes. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I would love to come back to talk about, like you said, archetypes, books, but also as well, those midterms. I think we're going to have to do a special on that because they are so crucial.
Let's do it. Okay. Thank you, Hogarth.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Cheers.